It was supposed to be a simple hike. 5 friends, fresh out of college, eager for adventure and the open air, decided to explore an isolated trail in the heart of the dense forest. Each of them had hiked before, but this particular trail was new. It was one they had heard whispers about, a trail that people rarely used anymore. There were vague rumors about it, tales of people getting lost, never to be seen again, or bizarre occurrences that couldn't quite be explained. The friends shrugged off the stories. After all, they were just that, stories. How bad could it be? The group consisted of Sam, the leader of the group, confident and always seeking thrills; Mark, the skeptic, who never believed in ghost stories or anything supernatural; Emily, the practical one, always prepared for any emergency; Priya, the sensitive one who often got spooked but never wanted to be left behind; and Jake, the joker of the group, always ready with a laugh to lighten any tense situation. They had chosen a weekend in early October for the hike, hoping to catch the stunning fall foliage. The weather was perfect, crisp air, clear skies, and the vibrant colors of autumn blanketing the forest. It seemed like an ideal day. The trail, called Blackridge Hollow, was located deep within the forest, a place where cell signals were non-existent, and the sound of nature was the only thing that filled the air. As they parked the car at the edge of the forest and prepared to set off, Priya hesitated. "Guys, are we sure about this? I've been reading up on this place, and there are some really creepy stories about it, like people going missing." Jake laughed and ruffled her hair. "Priya, you've been watching too many horror movies. We'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen? We get lost and have to camp out." Mark chimed in. "Look, even if there were stories, they're probably exaggerated. People probably wandered off the trail and got disoriented. It happens in every big forest." Sam clapped his hands together. "All right, let's move out. Daylight's burning." They started their hike around 9 a.m., the trail initially wide and well-marked. As they ventured deeper into the forest, however, the path began to narrow, and the dense canopy above them filtered the sunlight, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Emily, ever the responsible one, had a map and compass in hand. "We'll need to veer right in a bit. The trail splits ahead." An hour into the hike, the group's enthusiasm began to wane. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to close in around them. The tall trees, their trunks gnarled and covered in moss, seemed to bend toward them. The once comforting sounds of birds chirping and leaves rustling faded, replaced by a thick, oppressive silence. They reached a fork in the trail. Sam confidently took the right path, even though Emily hesitated. "Are you sure this is the right way? The map is outdated," Sam interrupted. "I've got a feeling this is the right direction." Reluctantly, the group followed, but as they ventured farther, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature seemed to drop noticeably, and Priya began to shiver, despite wearing a jacket. "Does anyone else feel weird?" Priya asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't like this," Emily agreed, looking around. "It's like something's watching us." Mark rolled his eyes. "Seriously, it's just a forest. There's nothing out here but us and some deer." They continued walking, but the unease grew. Soon, they came across something strange, a clearing in the woods, but it wasn't natural. In the center of the clearing stood an old, decaying cabin, its wood darkened with age and rot. Vines crept up its sides, and the windows were broken, like empty eye sockets staring back at them. "Creepy," Jake muttered, "but kind of cool." Sam grinned. "Looks like an adventure to me. Let's check it out." Emily was hesitant. "I don't think we should go near that thing. It's probably not safe." But Sam and Jake were already walking toward the cabin, curiosity peaked. Priya stayed back, her eyes wide with fear. "I really don't like this, guys." Reluctantly, Mark and Emily followed, leaving Priya to stand just outside the clearing, glancing nervously over her shoulder. As they approached the cabin, they noticed strange symbols carved into the wood near the door. They didn't recognize the language, but the carvings felt wrong, somehow. Jake pushed open the door, and it creaked loudly, revealing a dark, musty interior. The air inside was thick and heavy, as if the cabin had been untouched for decades. The floor was littered with old, broken furniture and debris. But there was something else, something that made them all stop in their tracks. In the center of the room was a table, and on that table lay a series of objects: an old, rusty knife, a pile of bones that looked disturbingly human, and a journal. The journal's pages were yellowed and torn, but it seemed out of place, as if someone had been there recently. "This is messed up," Mark said, backing away from the table. "We should go." But Sam picked up the journal, flipping through the pages. "Wait, look at this. It's a journal of someone who lived here. They talk about strange things happening, people disappearing, shadows in the woods." Before Sam could finish, a loud bang echoed through the cabin. like something had slammed against the wall. Everyone froze. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered. "Yeah," Jake said, his voice shaky. "We need to leave, now." As they turned to leave the cabin, the door slammed shut on its own with a deafening crash. Priya screamed from outside, her voice filled with terror. "Help! There's something out here," she cried, her voice barely audible through the thick wooden walls. Sam rushed to the door and yanked it open. Priya was gone. Panic set in. They rushed outside, calling her name, but there was no sign of her. The forest, once filled with the sounds of nature, was now eerily silent. It was as if the trees themselves had swallowed her whole. "We need to find her," Sam shouted, but as they looked around, the forest seemed different. The trail they had come from was gone. The trees seemed closer, the air thicker. "We're lost," Emily said, her voice trembling. "This isn't right. We need to go back to the cabin, stay together." But as they turned to head back to the cabin, they realized something horrifying. The cabin was gone. Panic surged through them. The clearing was still there, but where the cabin had stood, there was now nothing but grass and trees. It was as if it had never existed. "We have to get out of here," Mark said, his voice barely steady. "We need to find the trail." But the deeper they wandered into the forest, the more disoriented they became. Hours passed, and the sky began to darken. The trees seemed to shift around them, creating an ever-changing labyrinth. Strange noises echoed in the distance, footsteps, whispers, and the occasional rustle of leaves, but no sign of wildlife. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, stopping in his tracks. A low, guttural growl came from somewhere in the shadows. It didn't sound like any animal they had ever heard. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, moving between the trees. It was Priya, or at least, it looked like her. "Priya," Sam called out, relief flooding his voice. But as the figure drew closer, they realized something was wrong. Priya's eyes were empty, hollow black voids, and her movements were unnatural, jerky, as if she were being controlled by something unseen. She stopped a few feet away from them, staring blankly. "Priya," Emily whispered, stepping back in horror. The figure tilted its head, and then, with a sudden, inhuman speed, it lunged at them. Sam shoved Emily out of the way, and they all ran, hearts pounding, adrenaline surging through their veins. They ran for what felt like hours. The forest never ending, the shadows closing in. The thing that looked like Priya followed them, always just behind, its distorted voice calling out their names. Finally, they stumbled upon the car, parked just where they had left it at the edge of the forest. Without hesitation, they jumped in and sped off, leaving the forest behind. But as they drove away, Emily glanced in the rearview mirror, her blood turning cold. Priya was standing at the edge of the forest, watching them, but she wasn't alone. There were others, shadowy figures, standing just behind her, watching.